DeShon Elliott last night inked a 2-year, $12.5 million extension with the Steelers, $9.2 million guaranteed. I'll say this when it comes to DeShon Elliott. When he showed up last spring, I had no idea who the guy was. None. And we talked, Justin Simmons was out there. Justin Reed was out there. You had, there were safeties were deep in 2024 or going into 2024, and the Pittsburgh Steelers seemingly knew they were going to get somebody. They let Terrell Edmunds walk. They didn't look anywhere else in the NFL draft, and you were just thinking, who of this free agency class was going to end up in Pittsburgh? And then it was DeShon Elliott, and you're just going, I don't really know anything about this guy, but okay, maybe he's decent, maybe he's a move. I looked at him as cheap and has AFC North experience. Sounds great. Didn't know much about him. By the end of the season, DeShon Elliott was arguably the best defensive player, arguably the best player on the Pittsburgh Steelers. And this dude, if he's 28 years old and just now hitting his prime, man, the Steelers lucked out because he looks fantastic. He embraces the villain role, which to me was missing from the Steelers defense. They had TJ Watt. They had Cam Hayward. They had Minkah Fitzpatrick. They were all superstars, absolute studs. Joey Porter Jr. shows up. He's the dude who's going to punch you in the mouth. He doesn't really care, but he's kind of a corner outside guy. Patrick Queen adds himself a Landon Roberts as the bruiser. Awesome. Things are coming together, but they don't at any point have that dude who is just a villain. DeShon Elliott shows up. He becomes the villain, and he embraces it, and it's so fun to watch. On top of that, 108 tackles. Attempted 111 of them in 2025, which is unheard of for a guy to be that good. I remember still playing the Jets and him looking at Aaron Rodgers and just going like this as Aaron Rodgers is walking back to the huddle. And he looks at him, and DeShon Elliott just stops in his tracks like, go ahead, dude. You're going to walk towards me, or what are you going to – because I could care less. That's who the Steelers have. I think he's an absolute stud. He's possibly my favorite player on the defense, because I just think he embraces what it means to be a Pittsburgh Steeler so much and fits it so well. He is that guy, worth every penny. I think 6.75, I think it comes out to be $1 million a season, or $6.25 million a season, is an absolute steal for DeShon Elliott in the long run. And to me, I think the Steelers, this was a home run. Your thoughts on the signing?
Yeah, home run is too good of a description. I mean, it's so funny. We were talking yesterday about all this money that could be going to TJ Watt, and how much certain players and big impact players are worth. And the range is certainly spectacular, because you have polar opposites. You have players worth $30-40 million a year. And then you have someone like DeShon Elliott, who, as you said, was maybe the most valuable defender last year in Pittsburgh. He certainly was the most consistent, the most effective. And the fact that they are going to get him for, $15-16 million total for 25, 26, and the 2027 seasons is huge. And I think we can agree, and there's very little space to doubt that the Steelers knocked this one out of the park with this extension. So yeah, I'm excited. I think I was surprised that this was the one that got done first. I don't, and maybe I just forgotten, or just was not on my radar at all, but I did not think that the Steelers were going to have another defensive player sign an extension before TJ Watt. So I was surprised about that. But all in all, great deal. I think DeShon seems super pleased by his comments on Instagram, and the Steelers have to be thrilled. So yeah, great move.
I agree. And I didn't see it coming. I think I'm equally as surprised as you are that, okay, did I expect DeShon, Calvin Austin, Jalen Warren to be options? Definitely. But I didn't expect anything to get done before TJ Watt gets done. And I mean, I'm looking at it going, right now, the Steelers are just saying, let's make sure our core is in place and happy while we wait for TJ Watt, which is unlike the Steelers. They are a checklist type of team, and I think it works out pretty well. So I'll ask you this, just to kind of fade off of that. Calvin Austin, Jalen Warren might be the next two, the only really other two names that are on the list when it comes to potential extensions for the Steelers. I mean, Isaac Seumalo is entering the final year of his deal, but I think that's a wait and see how he looks. And if he chooses to retire, great. But if not, maybe you keep him around while you look for that next starter long-term in the NFL draft. Calvin and Jalen seem to be those guys. With DeShon's move, does it change your thoughts on the potential that either of them get done this offseason?
Oh, it certainly changes my belief that there's more potential, that the possibility is greater than it was ever before. And it really, I can't say that I have any strong expectations now as to who the next deal to get done is. I was basically all in on the fact that TJ Watt would be the next player to sign an extension, and that was just the first domino that needed to fall. So yeah, I think everything is now on the table in a way that I did not think about 24 hours ago. And I still think, like you were comparing Seumalo to a wait and see situation, I think Jaylen Warren and Calvin Austin are both in wait and see situations as well, at least from the Steelers' perspective. I could see both of them wanting to try and get a deal done, but there's just way too many moving pieces, way too many question marks, and players waiting to prove themselves and yet to have proven themselves, but will be given the opportunities once there's actual game action. So I think everybody's in a wait and see right now from the Steelers' perspective. But if you would have asked me yesterday morning or, a week ago, hey, do you think someone's going to get a deal done between now and camp? I would have been like, yeah, TJ Watt, and that's about it. So
Yep.
What do I know?
I agree. I looked at it and said there was a slight chance, but nothing happens. It was a ticking time bomb. That's how I looked at it. Is you're racing the clock. Are you going to get something done with TJ with enough time to start negotiating with Calvin and negotiating with DeShon and negotiating with Jalen? And to be really honest with you, like all three of them sit in the same boat to me. DeShon was the one that I think had the most questions because DeShon Elliott's always been like starter quality, but nothing crazy. The first 5 years in the NFL, dealt with some injuries, came to Pittsburgh, was unreal last season. And I thought you would have looked at it. I thought the Steelers would have looked at it as we see what he does this season, but that position has been a rotational piece for so long that we're not going to hitch ourselves to anything and say this is a definite. Instead, they'd see what the season brought and then decide from there if DeShon's going to stick around, if his value isn't too high in free agency. So once you do that, I do think it opens the door to say they are willing to look at these other options while they're negotiating with TJ, and maybe they do get everything done because it makes a ton of sense to get everything done. Like it makes so much sense to sign Jalen right now. You could be a Caleb Johnson guy and believe he's going to be the star for the next 10 years of the Pittsburgh Steelers, but you still want a running back there next to him. You want a Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery. You want that 1A, 1B, and the Steelers have that, and Caleb Johnson and Jaylen Warren. They don't want that to end after this season. They want it to remain the same. So extending Jalen now before his value goes up even further just makes a lot of sense. Calvin Austin is in the same boat. You could get Calvin for dirt cheap right now. You could sign Calvin to $7 million a season, $8 million a season, and get him for 3 years. And I mean, you just inked at worst your wide receiver 3 for the next 2 to 3 seasons at almost bare minimum money for a wide receiver. And I think that works out really well for the Steelers, just to the point of now they have some foundation in place. This isn't a revolving door of Van Jeffersons and Scotty Millers and Robert Woods and all these guys trying to figure it out. They have their pieces in place. And with Elliott, I do think it opens the door. If I had to predict it, I'm going to be honest with you. I think Jalen gets it. This might be surprising, but I think Jalen gets it next. And then I think Calvin gets it because I think Calvin's will be easy. I don't think it'll be difficult if we're outside of TJ. I think Jalen's would be something that you want now. And then Calvin's is one that, like, if it doesn't work out, okay, you could wait till next offseason. But I think it's just going to be so simple to say, like, okay, this is how much money we have left. That's yours if you want it. If not, we'll negotiate next season. But I would imagine Jalen's the next name on here. Do you think that these deals as they come make it maybe less likely that TJ signs. Does that impact anything at all?
No, that it still doesn't change my mind in terms of how massive I anticipate this deal being for the Steelers. You know, what that actually ends up being, still up for debate, of course, but
Yeah.
I think that it's the number one priority for the Steelers has to be getting a satisfactory deal done for both sides for TJ Watt. And I think that is still the most important thing that they need to get done before regular season actually begins. So, uh, what I think the biggest takeaway is with DeShon Elliott here is that for the modest salary, especially compared to what TJ is going to command, it seems like they have a ton of flexibility to get those smaller salary types of deals done, maybe in the interim while they're still hammering out the final details with TJ. Because it seems like there isn't anything closer on that front. So maybe, a Jalen Warren makes a little over $5 million for the 2025 season.
Yeah.
If that's the same sort of salary he wants on his next deal and it's a couple of years, well, I mean, heck, that's probably the best type of that's the best case scenario for the Steelers if they can get him on the cheap to sign for another couple of years. And I would say that the same situation just happened with DeShon Elliott. So yeah, I think the possibility is improved and it is increased. But man, I'm just going to be shocked every single time another player that isn't named TJ Watt signs a new deal in Pittsburgh.